Hello everyone, welcome to NeoUnrealist. Every once in a while you hear something so odd, you think that it's a satire out of The Onion or the Babylon Bee. I reckon a lot of people had that experience yesterday and today when they saw the Wall Street Journal headline titled, "Trump Eyes a New Real Estate Purchase, Greenland." I know, it sounds crazy at first, right? Well, you'd be wrong. A great deal of the land that makes up the United States was acquired via land purchases from other countries. In 1803, during the presidency of Thomas Jefferson, the Louisiana Territory, comprising most of the land between the Mississippi River and the Rocky Mountains, was acquired from France. An area of land totaling 828,000 square miles, or roughly 530 million acres, that today make up the land for about 15 of our 50 states. Now, I think it was bought for the cool sum of $15 million, or an average of 3 cents an acre. The Alaska Purchase, or Seward's Folly, as some dubbed it at the time, was completed in 1867 when President Andrew Johnson signed a treaty with Russia giving sovereignty over the Alaska Territory to the United States, some 586,000 plus square miles, for the incredibly low price of just $7 million. In the U.S. Virgin Islands, of Epstein Island fame, we acquired those from Denmark. Yes, the same Denmark that currently controls the island of Greenland that we're talking about in this video. The United States did business with Denmark in 1917, buying the U.S. Virgin Islands from the Danes for the price of $25 million. So you see, not only is this kind of transaction not unprecedented in U.S. history, it's actually how we grew from a collection of former British colonies hugging the Atlantic coastline to gaining mostly of the North American landmass. So, let not the fact that this idea is being said to have been discussed in the White House throw you off. It's not the first time. In fact, the United States has been wanting to acquire Greenland from the Danes, for more than 100 years, back as far back as the 1800s. So in case you don't know the place I'm talking about, Greenland it's an autonomous island country. It's part of the Kingdom of Denmark. It's located between the Arctic and Atlantic Oceans. It's east of the Canadian Arctic archipelago. And our best guess puts Greenland as having been first inhabited at the earliest 2500 BC, about 4,500 years ago, by Paleo-Eskimos. Archaeologists called that first Greenland culture the Sakak culture. Now, the Sakaks, they were joined for a time by another group of Paleo-Eskimos called the Independence I culture, and those guys lasted from 2400 to 1300 BC, a little over 1,000 years. Sometime around the 800 BC mark, the Sakak culture disappeared from Greenland, and then Greenland was inhabited by two new cultural groups called the Dorset culture of Paleo-Eskimos in western Greenland, and then the Independence II culture was up in northern Greenland. The Independence II culture, they did not last into the AD era. They disappeared in or around 80 BC. But the Dorset people, they were the first to really thrive throughout a large part of Greenland, basically around the coasts on the east and west side, and they lived primarily by hunting whales and caribou. And they were still around when that first contingent of Icelandic and Norwegian settlers in 14 boats that was led by the famous Viking explorer Eric the Red arrived in 986 AD and set up 3 settlements around the southwestern tip of Greenland. Now, Eric the Red, he recruited others to go live in Greenland by means of what's thought to be the first known land scam in North America. He named the place Greenland in Old Norse, and he portrayed it as having better farmland than there was in Iceland. But, as when the people got there, they said, holy crap, this guy, he sold us a bill of goods. So, yeah, those Norse settlers, they started off, and they lived for a while, independent of any nation. These were basically people that were looking to get away from entanglements anyway. But that all came to an end in 1261 AD when the Greenlanders, they submitted to the rule of King Haakon IV of Norway, and as a result of his aggressive foreign policy. So most of what we know about the European settlements comes from medieval Norwegian sagas, like the Konungsskudja saga that describes the exports from the Norse Greenland people, what they imported, as well as details about their cultivation of grain. Now, in 1397, Norway merged with the Kingdom of Denmark for a period of time, for about a century, and that's how Greenland first became a possession associated with the Kingdom of Denmark. And that was a little after a new culture showed up of Inuit people called the Thule culture. They entered Greenland from the north about 1300, and the Thule people, they are the ancestors of most of Greenland's current day population. They left Alaska, or what's today known as Alaska, around 1000 AD, so 3,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, and they arrived in Greenland around 1300, like I said, and they were the ones that brought the technological innovations of dog sleds and toggling whaling harpoons. You know, the harpoons with 2 points. So the Norse settlers, they abandoned their settlements in Greenland during the 14th and 15th centuries during the Little Ice Age. So there was a little overlap between the arrival of the Thule culture and the abandonment of the settlements by the Norse people. Now, some speculate the reason for the Norse settlements being just abandoned or left or failing is that there was a collapse in the price for walrus ivory over the course of the 1400s, and that prompted the Greenland Norse to leave. They never numbered more than 2,500 people anyway at their largest extent. So, from about the year, say, 1500 to today, the only people who really permanently lived on Greenland between then and recent times were the Thule people, mainly the Inuits. So, although the Danish government still maintained a claim on Greenland, it was de facto under the control of the Inuit people that remained when the Norse just weren't on the island anymore. But Denmark did eventually return to Greenland. They sent a mission in 1721 to reassert Danish sovereignty over the place. That mission searched for years. They just wondered if the old Danish settlements were still there, but they were unable to find those settlements that were lost contact with decades before, and if not centuries. But after 15 years, that mission, they decided to just form a new settlement. They called it Good Hope, on the southwest coast, and they opened it up for Danish merchants. And Greenland was pretty much closed off to the world. I mean, like I said, the only people that could really go there were the Danish merchants that the government of Denmark they only really let them go there. But it was in 1940 where Greenland's history changes and they come into the modern era, because in World War II is going on and Germany occupied Denmark. So all contact between Denmark and Greenland was basically cut. And in 1941, the United States moved in and occupied Greenland to keep it out of the hands of the Axis powers. And the United States named a guy named Eske Brun as governor to rule the island until the end of the war. In 1946, with that all over, President Harry Truman, he offered to buy Greenland from Denmark. This was the last time that the United States attempted to purchase Greenland from Denmark. He offered them $100 million. That was a lot of money back then, and Denmark refused the offer. When, if they had, just looking at it from an economic and business standpoint, they probably really should have taken the deal. It would have made a lot more money, in hindsight. But anyway, in 1950, Greenland was declared a welfare state with Denmark as its sponsor. The United States was allowed to have Thule Air Base more or less for free. They didn't have the United States has basically complete and total military access to Greenland, and they didn't really have to pay anything for it. They just gave it to them. There's the air base. Fly in and out of here anytime you want. So this was part of the Cold War era NATO defense strategy against the Soviet Union. So it made sense in that respect. But this is an odd situation. Greenland is basically a dependent of the country of Denmark. I mean, think about this. They were given a great deal of autonomy under Denmark's Home Rule Act. Queen of Denmark, Margaret II, she remains Greenland's head of state. But they didn't want to be a part of the European Union. They didn't agree with their laws, especially with around fishing. But today, apart from the fact that Denmark gives them $3.2 billion Danish, it's a grant, 3.2 billion Danish kroners. They give them that every year to run their government budget. It makes up most of it, as a matter of fact. But apart from the foreign affairs and defense, Greenland basically has self-rule and has complete self-rule since 2009. And it's on a slow glide path to independence, at least they say so. But that's in theory anyway, because if you really look at Greenland's situation, there's only about 55,000 people total who live in Greenland. I mean, 88% of them, they're Inuit. There's at most maybe 1,000 Americans at the Thule Air Base up north. It's run by the U.S. Air Force. It's basically an empty ice sheet. That's what it is. It's a net drain on the government of Denmark. As I said, they fund the majority of the budget to the tune of 3.2 billion kroner. I'm sorry. And I mean, the economy, such as it is, it just isn't that big. It's highly dependent on fishing. 90% of Greenland's export is fish. There's some valuable minerals and precious metals there. There's some oil and gas, but the cost of extraction is high. I mean, think about it. They're sitting on top of a cap of ice a mile deep. So even when prices are high, it's just not generally profitable to extract that type of stuff from Greenland. Some years the state oil company even loses money, if you can believe that. I mean, how do you lose money running an oil company? But look, Greenland, more than half the government's revenue comes from the Danish government. There's only 50,000 people there, like I said. It's a welfare state, and absent that aid, the place would probably suffer greatly. As Denmark isn't an aggressive world power, it has no military need to maintain or project power for offensive military purposes. And if for some bizarre reason Greenland were to ever come to need military defense, Denmark is just incapable of defending Greenland. It's on the other side of the ocean. They have no way of projecting power there. It would basically be the United States doing most, if not all, the heavy lifting. When you're talking about military defense for Greenland. So the biggest positive news that I could find in recent years, speaking economically, was that they found some ruby deposits. There's also a little bit of gold there, but I just don't see Greenland being self-sufficient anytime soon, given the difficulties that I mentioned before. Still, all that said, people being people, it's a matter of pride, and on the part of the Greenlanders, and also from the Danish side as well, it's a matter of pride for them as well. Probably they just won't sell. Even if Trump is serious about buying Greenland, even if economically it makes no sense for Denmark to hold on to Greenland, even if the Greenlanders, clearly they can't make a go of it on their own, they just can't. They depend on the Danish taxpayer, basically. But even other than that, there's also, the optics of the U.S. buying a place with a population that's like 88% indigenous. It's only about 12% people that you could call Danes. It's just not going to happen. Even if it makes a lot of sense, like I mentioned, for all sides involved, the U.S., Denmark, and the Greenlanders. But the Greenlanders, they seem content to just continue to live off the generous largesse of the Danish taxpayers and depend on the United States for its military defense and persist in the pretense of being a self-sufficient place. That's all for this NeoUnrealist. If you want to help the channel out, click the like button for this video, leave a comment below, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Don't forget to click on the notification bell and set it to all. Otherwise clicking subscribe won't amount to squat. In YouTube's infinite wisdom, subscribe doesn't mean anything. You have to click on a notification bell. If you want to go above and beyond to support the channel more directly, follow the links below to Subscribestar or PayPal. Would love to build up that pledge base on Subscribestar to remove dependence on the benevolence of YouTube, their ever-shifting advertising restrictions. Also, don't forget, those of you who watch on BitChute can use the green tip pledge button on your video player too. Last but not least, if at this point you've made it through this video with me going on about the obscure history of a big chunk of ice in the North Atlantic and why the United States has any interest in buying it, I salute your patient indulgence. Thanks for watching.